A city is a living thing. It has a rhythm, a heartbeat, a spirit. Nowhere is that seen more than in Chicago. Have you taken a bike ride along the lakefront trail or kayaked down the Chicago River? How about a scenic drive along the shores of Lake Michigan? A ride on the L? A trip on the Magnificent Mile? Or enjoyed America's pastime at Wrigley Field? If you have, then you know the beauty of this great lake city is stunning. You know it has a culture that is unmatched of any city. But underneath the lights, the beautiful buildings, there is a downside to living here. The taxes and regulation, the corruption, the traffic, the crime, and the brutal winters have caused many to leave the Windy City. The story of Chicago is not perfect, oh, far from it. But time after time, the fortitude of the people of the city have risen up to meet the challenge. Perhaps a lesson for today. In this video, we are going to show Chicago by drone, by helicopter, by bike, by the L, and by kayak, as well as take a quick trip back in history to see how the Chicago spirit has overcome obstacles to become an epicenter of business and a travel destination for over 60 million visitors a year. Could decisions from its local government be chasing away its people? So come with us as we explore Chicago, from the north side to the south side and downtown, and experience for yourself both the good and the bad. The spirit of Chicago. It is morning on the Chicago River. Bikers crossing the Link Bridge as the sun rises over Lake Michigan and the Navy Pier. It's another beautiful day in the Windy City, the sunlight reflecting on its skyline. The Willis Tower, the nation's tallest building, with the exception of One World Trade Center in New York. The name Chicago is an Indian word for a garlic plant. It was first given to the river, then the city named after the river in 1830. 30 years later, Abraham Lincoln would be nominated by the Republicans for president here. Within the skyline, you can see the spirit of Chicago. Its history is in its architecture. A past that is much like the Chicago of today, filled with corruption and challenges. In 1871, Chicago was the fifth largest and fastest growing American city, being at the center of the industrial age and located amidst vital waterways and railroads. As a result, its buildings were constructed quickly and with highly flammable wood. Legend has it that Miss O'Leary's cow knocked over a lantern and started a fire that burned for 30 hours. It killed 300 people and left 1/3 of the city homeless. In 1871, there was no FEMA, no federal aid. It was up to the toughness of the people of Chicago. And they rose up like the '85 Bears defensive line. And within 20 years, Chicago became the second largest city in the country, tripling its population. Miss O'Leary, like Steve Bartman, would be exonerated, although 100 years after her death. As we travel down North Michigan Avenue on what is known as the Magnificent Mile, we see a survivor of that fire, the old Chicago Water Tower, built 2 years before the fire. The L, short for elevated, began service in 1892 and today is the only elevated train in any U.S. city. While it runs for 224 miles with 8 different lines, it forms the loop in downtown and is a great way to get around. The first skyscraper to be built on the Magnificent Mile was the Wrigley Building, completed in 1924. It is 2 towers with the south building having a clock tower at the top. At nighttime, it glows with its sparkling white terracotta exterior. A year later, across the street from the Wrigley Building, the neo-Gothic Chicago Tribune Tower opened up. It is currently being converted from an office building into condominiums. Should be completed this year. Nothing like starting the day with a ride down the Lakefront Trail, an 18-mile bike and pedestrian trail along the shores of Lake Michigan. Chicago is a very bike-friendly city and a great way to get around. The trail gives you a great view of the skyline as well as Lake Michigan. It passes by Soldier Field, the Shed Aquarium, Grant Park, Buckingham Fountain, DuSable Harbor, and much more. If you are not into biking, you can rent a Segway or just drive along the scenic Lakeshore Drive, which runs along the trail for 15 miles. The Chicago River, you might say, is what put this city on the map. While it is not very long at 156 miles, it was important because it provided a link between the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes. There are a variety of scenic boat rides you can take here. Or what I recommend is to rent a canoe from Urban Kayaks. About $30 per hour per person, well worth it. As well as being the birthplace of deep dish pizza, Chicago is also the birthplace of someone we talked about last week, Walter Elias Disney. Also Robin Williams, Kanye West, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Belushi, and many more. It is said by some to be the birthplace of baseball. The Cubs, originally called the White Stockings, started playing in 1876. In 1901, another Chicago baseball team with the same name started playing on the South Side. 2 years later, the North Side team changed their name to the Cubs. You can watch a game and not even be inside the stadium. Since 1914, bleachers located on rooftops of buildings on Waveland and Sheffield Avenues. Hey Cubs front office, why did you let go of the best manager in baseball, Joe Maddon, who broke the curse, who gave you the first championship in 108 years? Oprah Winfrey became one of the most successful self-made women in Chicago, with a popular TV show running for 25 years, but she left in 2015. Oprah Winfrey and Joe Maddon are not the only ones to leave Chicago. While there is a general migration from the north to the south, there is a great exodus from Chicago. The city has dropped in population for the 4th straight year, and Illinois is 49th out of 50 states in net migration. High taxes and cost of living are given as the biggest reason for those who have left. They are often choosing states with no income tax like Texas and Florida, or with at least a lower cost of living like Wisconsin and Indiana. While the loss is not enough to notice any relief from the crowded roads, it is enough to threaten tax revenue and federal funding. A loss that lawmakers have opted to make up for with tax hikes. In July of 2019, the city increased its gas tax to 69 cents per gallon and 77 cents per gallon on diesel, which costs truckers and in return makes cost of goods and services more expensive. These high tax rates produce the opposite effect. This, as well as extensive regulations, have caused small business owners to leave, giving jobs and tax revenue to another state. In 2020, Chicago's restaurant and parking taxes significantly increased. And you know, if you have ever stayed at a hotel in Chicago, there is a hefty hotel tax. And all of this on top of a high sales tax rate of 10.25%, which makes visiting Chicago more expensive. Illinois taxpayers are overtaxed and fed up. Residents have little faith that their hard-earned money is being spent well by the government, and there's good reason for that. You probably thought that the term Windy City comes from weather conditions. Well, no. Most historians will tell you it comes from Chicago's history of corruption. Just the latest example is Ed Burke, the Dean of Chicago City Council, re-elected somehow to his 13th term in office just weeks after the FBI raided his office, charging him with attempted extortion, and faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted. But he got over 53% of the vote. Oh, he's just one of many stories. While Illinois is tied for fourth in highest tax states when you combine income and sales tax, what are the results of all that taxpayer money? In 2019, here is how Illinois ranked out of 50 states. 19th in education, although that is up from 24th in 2018. 24th in infrastructure, 43rd in natural environment, and 20th in crime and corrections. People are also leaving Chicago because of crime, although the really bad gang violence is isolated to certain sections, mostly on the south and west side. You probably don't want to be hanging out in Garfield Park, South Shore, or Inglewood. But downtown is pretty safe. You shouldn't have any problems. I guess that is, unless you are Jussie Smollett. Chicago's tax dollars certainly don't seem like they're doing much for the road system. Traffic has been getting progressively worse. Congestion in Chicago was the second worst in the country, up from third in 2018 and fifth in 2017. Only Boston is worse. It is estimated that commuters spent 145 hours in traffic in 2019, and that road congestion cost drivers an average of $2,146 per driver per year. Chicago's downtown is much more dense than the more sprawling Sunbelt cities. Just to pay for parking can be about as much a month as an apartment in some cities. While snow can be fun for people like me who don't live in it, the winters in Chicago can be brutal, many residents heading south for more milder winters. While the taxes, cost of living, corruption, traffic, and weather will cause some to move, don't think that Chicago is going down anytime soon. The people of Chicago know what challenges are and have been overcoming them for 190 years. Just as there will soon be Cubs games at Wrigley, the Bears trying to find a good quarterback, visitors at the Millennium Park, or movies at the Chicago Theater, there will always be that Chicago spirit fighting through. For the success of a city is not always dependent on the government. Certainly the government can help or hinder, but in America, as it is in Chicago, it is the hard-working people, by the grace of God, who overcome crisis, challenges, and tough times. Miss O'Leary's cow could not destroy that pride, that spirit of the people of Chicago. As they overcame in the past, be assured that they will do so in the future. I would love to hear your thoughts about Chicago. Are you leaving or staying, and why? We are Tampa Aerial Media. We shoot travel promos across the USA. Coming up in the next couple of months, Charlotte and Philadelphia. For stock footage, or if you would like us to shoot your city, venue, or location, contact us at info@tampaaerialmedia.com. Thank you for watching The Spirit of Chicago, a lesson for America today.